All right, the time has come. What do I think was the worst in cinema in 2023? Hi, it's Brian. This is the awards contender, and in today's video, I'm giving you my list of the worst movies of the year. Here we go. Number 10, AntMan Quantum Mania. So I've seen about 120 films released in 2023. I went to the Sundance Film Festival, the Telluride Film Festival, went to the theater a lot and watched a lot at home. I also got these lovely screeners, which has been really fun. Catching up on so many movies that are being considered this award season. Now, most of the films I'm talking about in this video are not being considered for Oscars and things like that. They're being considered for the Razzies, let's face it. Starting with my number 10 choice, Ant-Man Quantumania. What a slog this movie is. And what a way to kick off what was truly a terrible year for comic book movies. Thank God for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There were some really bad comic book movies this year, and Ant-Man Quantumania is one of the worst. It starts off okay. I would say the first 20 to 30 minutes, I was kind of into it. But once the movie just becomes wall-to-wall action in that last hour plus, I was done. I was like, this movie needs to be over right now. I mean, the visual effects are ugly to look at. You don't really get invested in the narrative the way you did, I would say, especially in the first Ant-Man movie from a few years ago. This one just felt safe and tired without any real passion from the people making the movie. It felt like, okay, the studio needed a Marvel movie for February 2023. Well, let's do Ant-Man again. That will bring in the audience. There just didn't seem to be enough story to warrant this third installment. And yeah, this one was pretty bad. Number 9 is The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So this is not a god-awful movie, but I really struggled getting to the end. I found the pacing to be way too slow. There's very little tension throughout the narrative. And I did read this book when it came out a few years ago, and I didn't much care for it. I don't care for the movie either. I just don't care about this guy's backstory. I don't think it's enough to warrant a nearly 3-hour movie. I like The Hunger Games fine, especially the first two films. I think Catching Fire is excellent. That's by far the best movie in this franchise. I did not like how they split Mockingjay into 2 films. That should have been 1. And then we have this prequel, which just to me feels like, oh, you know, it's been a few years. Suzanne Collins wrote another book, and so let's put another film into production. I mean, it makes sense. I understand why this film exists. I understand why some people really like it. I mean, the world of Panem, the world of the Hunger Games, is kind of interesting. But in this film, this story, the 2 lead characters, for me, are way too bland. And there's not much life in the story. I felt like the movie was winding down, and I was happy for it. And then it said part 3. And I was like, are you kidding me? There's another part? There's another like 45 plus minutes to go here. And I thought that third act was just deadly. I mean, we do get Viola Davis here having fun, kind of hamming it up. I liked her moments. Peter Dinklage does some good work. It's not all horrendous, but yeah, this one is pretty weak, and I don't want to have to watch it ever again. Number 8 is Foe. Now, I just finished watching this movie a few hours ago, and I kind of want to dare my friends and family to see if they can make it to the end of Foe. This movie is that bad. Like, this movie feels like a lesser Black Mirror episode that they stretched from 1 hour to 2 hours. 2 hours long, and Foe is a mess. I did not ever care about the story, where things were headed, even though this movie has 2 lovely, talented, charismatic actors in Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal. Like, what happened here? It's very strange to see two actors I love this much just kind of going through the motions, not given very much to play, and it's basically just the two of them in a house for the majority of the running time. Like at least 70 to 80% of this thing is the two of them in a house, conversing, having sex, not having sex, and it just, like, I knew about an hour in, I was like, okay, everybody's right about Foe. This is not very good. It is not keeping my attention, and it never builds on anything. You would think in a movie like this, it's got some genre elements, by the third act, things would be getting a little bit more interesting, but no, it never does, and it has like two endings. At one point I thought, okay, now it's coming to a conclusion. But then there was like another few minutes and I was like, Jesus, this thing is going on forever. I made my Saoirse Ronan and the Elusive Oscar video last October. That video dropped the weekend that Foe came out. And even before I had seen this, I had read enough reviews to tell me, yeah, I don't think she's coming for Oscar nomination number 5 with Foe. And again, the problem isn't really their performances. Both Ronan and Mescal do what they can with the material, but there's just not enough on the page to keep us invested in this story. Some of the cinematography is nice. There's a moment with a burning farmhouse, horses rushing out that I liked. There's a part where Mescal is shooting at some spacecraft above him. That's a really cool moment. And speaking of Mescal, there are some very nice shots of him in the movie. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I don't know what happened with Foe. I would love to see Ronan and Mescal together in a much better movie. Number 7, Infinity Pool. The one movie I saw at last year's Sundance Film Festival that I detested pretty much from the opening scenes, and I still don't understand why a lot of people actually liked it, was Infinity Pool. I thought this movie was dreadful, shocking for no apparent reason, with a story that was just never interesting to me. Now, it does have a pretty good Mia Goth performance. She is the only reason, I think, to take a look at Infinity Pool. But yeah, I was never enjoying myself in that movie, and all of the twists and turns in the narrative I felt were kind of obvious. Some of the acting besides Mia Goth was pretty stiff, and by the end, I was just ready for this thing to wrap up. I don't get the sense that too many people are talking about Infinity Pool anymore. I don't sense that it's going to be like a cult film. I feel like a year later, it's already pretty well forgotten, and I do think that's for good reason. It's a really bad movie. Number 6, Murder Mystery 2. So here's a film that makes my list not because it's extraordinarily bad, but because it's basically like looking at a blank wall for 90 minutes. There is nothing to Murder Mystery 2. This is one of those Adam Sandler movies where he got to go on vacation, hang out with Jennifer Aniston, and make another film with her. These totally lame-ass movies get plenty of eyeballs on them via Netflix because everybody is just wanting to have a good time after a long day. They see, oh, there's a new Adam Sandler, Jennifer Aniston movie. Let's put that on. And I'm watching this movie. It's so by the numbers. It's not funny. It's not thrilling. Like, there's a little bit of chemistry between Sandler and Aniston. Like, just watching two big movie stars, sometimes, if you're in the right frame of mind, can be enough. And there is one moment at the beginning of this movie I have not forgotten. I remember it had something to do with a giraffe that got a huge laugh out of me. Like, I had one big laugh at the beginning of Murder Mystery 2, and that one laugh, those 5 seconds, kept Murder Mystery 2 from the bottom 5. That's why it's number 6 and not like 3 or 2, because of that one laugh. Sometimes that's all it takes. But yeah, this is a terrible waste of everyone's time. It's kind of sad when you think about all the hours in humanity that was wasted watching this movie. Number 5, The Exorcist Believer. Okay, so here is the only film on my list today of the worst films of 2023 I actually made its own video about. I was so pissed off driving home from the theater after having seen The Exorcist Believer. I said, I gotta make a video about this. I have a lot to say. Like, The Exorcist from 1973, I think is one of the greatest movies ever. It still has so much power to this day. And then 50 years on, you get to The Exorcist Believer, directed by David Gordon Green, and they got Ellen Burstyn to come back as Chris McNeil, and there's just nothing to this movie. It just sits there for the most part, and when it's not just sitting there, going through the motions, it pisses you off because the way this story uses Chris McNeil is a slap in the face to horror fans everywhere. Like, she's barely in the movie, maybe 8 to 10 minutes or so, and she's wasted 100%. Like, they could have used Ellen Burstyn in a really cool way, and it was like they pissed on the legacy of the original film and her character. I was so angry that I couldn't really pay attention to the movie anymore. I don't get the sense that they're going to make parts 2 and 3 of this supposed new trilogy. Like, I think David Gordon Green left the franchise. Like, I don't think he's signed on anymore, and for good reason. I love horror films. I love the original The Exorcist, but The Exorcist Believer, what a shit show. Number 4, Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. Now, after everything I just said about The Exorcist Believer, you might be surprised to learn it's still not the worst horror film I watched in 2023. That designation goes to the truly atrocious Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, a film that was so bad they didn't even release it in theaters. It dropped kind of quietly on Paramount Plus as an original movie. Oh boy. And as a huge Stephen King fan, and as a big fan of the novel Pet Sematary, and I really like the 1989 film version, I thought, well, it's right here, it's available, I'll take a look and see. Maybe it's okay. I mean, how do you mess up Pet Sematary to this degree? The biggest issue I had with Pet Cemetery Bloodlines is that after the opening 20-ish minutes or so that were okay, the movie is deadly dull. The narrative doesn't go anywhere interesting, and by the second half, I was already completely checked out, just trying to get myself to the end, because again, Stephen King adaptations are hit and miss. Sometimes they're pretty good, other times they're disappointing. This was more than a disappointment. This was a tragedy. Like, what went wrong here? Like, what happened? Who greenlit the project based on this screenplay? There is nothing remotely scary or entertaining or original about this script. It's like Paramount said, give us another Pet Sematary. You've got 2 weeks to write it. You've got 6 weeks to shoot it. And just give us something. That's what this enterprise felt like. And honestly, I was kind of shocked at just how banal the whole thing was. It is dreadful. Number 3, The Flash. So 2023 did feel in some ways like the year where comic book movies have finally hit the decline. Not only in their quality, but also in the box office returns too. Like, there were a couple standouts. As I said before, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is excellent. And I also like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But AntMan Quantumania is terrible. And the worst of the comic book movies of this year was The Flash. I was shocked at how horrendous this movie was. Considering I had been reading about this movie online for close to 10 years? Like, every few weeks, for years, you were hearing updates about the Flash movie. who was going to be in it, what special cameos we might get. Oh my god, Michael Keaton is coming back to play Batman. That was kind of exciting, actually. I mean, I love the 2 Batman films that Keaton is in, so that was kind of neat. And there were so many special effects and action sequences put together in this thing. I did not see The Flash in theaters. I watched it at home a few months after it had come out, and I had heard mostly negative reviews, so I kind of prepped myself for the worst, and it still surpassed my lowest expectations. This movie is an abomination. This to me felt like the absolute worst in Hollywood corporate filmmaking. A just totally bloated narrative with little emotion or tension, all of these Easter eggs that are supposed to satisfy us, like, oh, look who it is. Oh my god, look at that cameo. And it's like, I think we're done. We're done with this bullshit. Like, I'm over it. Like, give me a compelling story. That's first and foremost. Like, it just went on and on and on. I never cared about anyone or anything. And I just kept asking myself, what are we doing here? What is the point of all of this? There is no point. The Flash was, thank God, a box office bomb, and so we're not getting sequels or anything. Like, it ends there. But, oh boy, what a disaster. Number 2, Dix the Musical. Oh my god. Holy shit. What the hell happened with this movie? I did not understand what I was supposed to be laughing at or engaging with. I put this movie on hoping for the best. I mean, it's got Bowen Yang in the cast, Nathan Lane, Megan Mullally. It's an A24 release that played at the Toronto Film Festival. And after about 15 to 20 minutes, I was just not gelling with this one at all. And I kind of wanted to turn it off, honestly. But I was like, well, let's give it a little bit. Let's see. Maybe it gets better. And it got worse. It got weirder and weirder, but not in a good way. Just confusing, honestly. I didn't like any of the songs. I thought the 2 lead actors had no charisma at all. Like, I just felt like their presence in this film was like nails on a chalkboard. I didn't like spending time with those 2 characters, and so when we are with like Nathan Lane, it gets a little better, but I don't know what Megan Mullally is doing in this movie with her voice, with that character. It doesn't work. And then with Nathan Lane, we get these like 2 little creature characters that are living with him. And I'm like, is this supposed to be funny? Like, am I supposed to be entertained by this? To be honest, Dix the Musical felt to me like a student film where the director, for some reason, knew the right person, got enough money to expand his 10-minute short into 80 minutes and could get like some stars, because it never felt to me like a real movie. I was just like, who is this made for? It's not made for me. It's not made for little kids, even though most of the humor is very juvenile. By the 3rd act, I was like, get me the F out of here. This movie did not work for me at all. And the only reason it's not my number 1 choice is that it is only about 80 minutes. If Dix the Musical had gone on for another 30 to 40 minutes, I don't know if I would have made it. Like, I don't know if I could have gotten to the end. This one's really bad. I don't know why A24 picked it up. A24 is better than this. And now finally, what do I think was the number 1 worst movie of 2023? My choice is Haunted Mansion. What a shockingly dull experience it was to sit through 2 hours of Haunted Mansion. I have never seen the 2003 film starring Eddie Murphy. It has to be better than this. I don't know what went wrong here. One of my favorite theme park attractions of all time is the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, We've had 2 film adaptations of this ride. From everything I've heard, the '03 movie is not very good. And then 20 years on, we get another adaptation. It's coming out in the summer, right after Barbenheimer. It's got a really good cast. The director is excellent. And so I don't know what happened here. Like, this one is a miss from the beginning. This one is not entertaining, it's not scary, it's not funny, none of the characters come to life, and the movie as a whole is intensely visually ugly. It's so dark, you can barely see anything, and yet it's filled with wall-to-wall CGI, it doesn't look good, and then without there being any story or characters to engage you, there is just nothing here. I could not believe how bad this movie was. Like, I had heard mostly mixed things about it. I didn't hear too many, like, worst of the year comments from people. And I put it on around Halloween. It was on Disney Plus, and I kept hoping, waiting for it to get better. But no, nothing ever gels in this. And as we got to the final half hour, I was like, can I make it? Can I actually make it to the end of this movie? I had recognized by the 90-minute mark, this was definitely going to be one of the 2 or 3 worst films of the year. And I said, well, I should probably finish it so I can put it on the list, because otherwise I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I still watching this? In a very recent video, I called Virus the worst Jamie Lee Curtis movie ever made. But like, The Haunted Mansion comes pretty close. This is a total disaster. The 2 most painful hours of my life watching a film in 2023. Like, wow, what a mess this movie is. And again, it surprises me because the ride itself is so much fun. You'd think by now they could figure out how to make an entertaining movie based on this attraction, but they haven't yet. Maybe in another 20 years, 2043, we'll get a third one. It has got to be better than this. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned in the coming days for my list of the 10 best films of 2023. We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.